Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're looking at something pretty fascinating.
Oh, yeah?
Um, the connection between technology and society,
Okay.
but also how that impacts national identity. We're going to be looking at
Ah,
The Technological Republic. It's a book by Alex Karp and Nicholas Zamiska
right.
that came out in November 2024.
Okay.
And one of the most interesting things is they ask
Yeah.
whether Silicon Valley has kind of abandoned
Interesting.
its partnership with the U.S. government.
It does make you think.
Yeah,
Like, how much has Silicon Valley shifted its focus over the years?
That's a huge question the book tries to tackle. And they also ask
Hmm.
if our obsession with social media and consumer tech is actually preventing us
Yeah.
from achieving something bigger. Like, is that
I see.
really what technology should be all about?
So it's not just about the latest gadgets.
No, exactly. And then they
Oh.
delve into this whole other area about AI and national defense
Oh, wow.
and all those ethical concerns around it,
Definitely a hot topic these days.
isn't it?
With all the advancements we're seeing.
Absolutely. So we're going to unpack all of this.
Well, this is really challenging some fundamental beliefs we have about the tech world, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
Hmm.
One of the big things they talk about is that this idea that Silicon Valley has lost something crucial.
Okay. Interesting. So how do they back that up?
Well, they point to the history, like way back in the early days.
Okay.
Silicon Valley was super connected to the government. I mean, the military actually funded microchip development. And you had companies like Fairchild
I've heard of them.
working on satellite reconnaissance.
Wow. That's a far cry from like building apps for our phones.
It really is. It's a complete shift. Like they went from building bombs
Right.
to building apps.
Like a total 180. And I guess a prime example of that would be
Definitely. Steve Jobs and Apple, the book points to them as like
hmm
the embodiment of this individualistic, consumer-focused approach, especially their resistance
Oh, yeah.
to giving the government access to user data.
Right. That was a huge deal at the time.
It was, and it set the tone for a lot of what came after.
I can see that. Their whole thing was about personal empowerment through tech,
Yeah,
but in a way that kind of moved away from those collective national ambitions that defined earlier tech.
and the book argues that this shift has really impacted our sense of national identity and purpose.
Hmm. How so?
Well, they say that this relentless emphasis on individual wants and needs
Okay.
has actually diminished support for collective efforts.
Like national defense, for example.
Exactly, and they point to these innovation deserts.
Innovation deserts. What are those?
There are areas where Silicon Valley just avoids venturing because they're seen as too risky
Oh, I see.
or politically charged.
So, like, what kind of areas?
Well, law enforcement's a big one.
Okay.
They talk about New Orleans using Palantir software.
Oh, yeah, for predictive policing?
Exactly, and of course that sparked a ton of controversy.
Yeah, I remember that. A lot of people were worried about potential bias and privacy issues.
Exactly, and the book uses that as an example of how people are more afraid of making a mistake
Mm-hmm.
than they are excited about potentially creating positive change.
It's almost like they're playing it safe.
Exactly. And they tie this back to a broader cultural shift.
Hmm.
Like this preoccupation with individual liberties and freedoms
Okay.
might actually be causing us to overlook the importance of collective action and shared goals.
So they're saying that maybe we've swung too far in the direction of individualism?
Exactly. And now we need to find a way to bring back
Yeah.
some of that collective spirit.
Okay, so we've got Silicon Valley's changing focus and these innovation deserts. But what about AI?
They talk a lot about AI, especially how it's changing the game when it comes to warfare.
I can give you that. AR is advancing so rapidly.
It is.
It's kind of mind-boggling.
And they highlight how it's accelerating the pace of military tech advancements,
Okay.
like way faster than anything we've seen before.
So, like, compared to what?
Well, they contrast it with the development of nuclear weapons.
Oh, wow. That took years and years of research and testing.
It did, but AI-powered weaponry, that's progressing at lightning speed.
It's true. It seems like every day there's a new breakthrough.
And that's where the big ethical question comes in.
Right. Are we even ready to handle the ethical complexities of using AI in warfare?
It's a huge dilemma. And they bring up the Blake Lemoine incident at Google.
Oh, yeah, with Lambda? That was pretty wild.
It was. He claimed that their language model
Right.
was actually sentient.
It really captured the public's imagination and brought to the surface a lot of those fears about AI becoming too powerful and too independent.
And what's interesting is that a lot of people in Silicon Valley are actually hesitant
Really?
to work on military AI applications.
Why is that? I mean, these are the same people building those complex algorithms that
Yeah,
track our every move online.
exactly. But when it comes to the military,
They have reservations.
major reservation.
So what's behind that reluctance?
The book suggests it's a combination of things, like a deep skepticism of the government,
Okay.
moral concerns about war,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even a sense of guilt about the power they already have.
I see. So they're grappling with the potential consequences of their work.
Yeah, and they're worried about getting caught up in something they don't believe in.
But isn't that a dangerous stance to take? I mean, while we're debating the ethics,
Right.
other countries are moving full steam ahead with AI development.
It's true. And the book argues that this could put us at a serious disadvantage on the world stage.
It's a sobering thought, almost like we're becoming complacent, fixated on consumer tech, while bigger threats loom on the horizon.
They really paint a stark picture. Like maybe our obsession with the latest gadgets
Mm-hmm.
is blinding us to the bigger picture.
So they're not exactly optimistic then.
Well, they're definitely concerned, but they do offer a potential way forward.
Okay, I'm all ears. What do they suggest?
They call it rebuilding the technological republic. And it all starts with
Yeah,
rediscovering a shared sense of purpose
okay.
and national identity.
So basically bringing back that collective spirit we were talking about earlier.
Precisely. It's about harnessing technology's power for good,
Right.
but doing it together as a nation.
Instead of just focusing on individual gain. I like that idea, but how do we actually get there?
They introduce this fascinating concept called the engineering mindset.
An engineering mindset. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's all about pragmatism,
Okay.
focusing on outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
and directly confronting problems head on.
So kind of like a problem-solving approach.
Exactly. And they see this mindset as essential for tackling those complex challenges we talked about.
Like AI development and national defense.
Exactly. They even give a concrete example of this.
Oh, yeah.
It's the 5 whys approach.
5 whys. That sounds interesting.
It's this idea of repeatedly asking why to get to the root of an issue.
So like a deep dive into the cause of a problem?
Yeah. Whether it's a technical glitch or a social
All
problem,
right, you keep it.
you keep asking why until you uncover that core issue.
That makes sense. By understanding the root cause, you can then come up with effective solutions.
Exactly. So we need to combine that engineering mindset
Okay.
with this renewed sense of shared purpose.
So how do we actually achieve that? Like how do we bridge the gap
Right.
between individual aspirations and collective needs?
Well, that's where the book gets really interesting. They start talking about the importance of shared culture and values as the foundation for everything.
Interesting. So they're saying that culture is kind of like the glue that holds society together.
It is. They use Singapore and its language policies as an example,
Oh, okay.
showing how prioritizing a shared culture can actually contribute to a nation's success.
It's like a case study in how intentional cultural policies can create a sense of unity and shared identity.
Exactly. And it's a powerful argument.
It is, but then again, Singapore is a relatively small and homogenous country. How does that translate to a place as diverse as the U.S.?
That's the million-dollar question. And they acknowledge that it's complex,
Okay.
but they suggest we need to find ways to celebrate our commonalities while still respecting our differences.
So kind of like threading a needle
Yeah.
between unity and diversity.
It's a delicate balance, but they think it's possible.
So they're calling for a pretty significant shift in how we think about things.
They are.
Like a move away from the hyper-individualism we've seen in recent decades.
Exactly. It's about rediscovering the power of collective action and shared purpose. It's about taking on the challenges and opportunities of this technological era
Right.
with a sense of ambition.
They're encouraging us to think bigger,
Yes.
to aim higher,
Yes.
to work together as a nation. I like that. It's inspiring.
It is. And they believe it's the only way we can truly build a better future for everyone.
A technological republic where tech benefits all of humanity, not just a select few. It's a bold vision.
It is, and one we'll be exploring in more depth in the next part of our deep dive.
Well, I'm definitely hooked. This is some thought-provoking stuff. I can't wait to see where they go with this.
Stay tuned, folks, because this is just the beginning.
Picking up where we left off, the authors of the Technological Republic
Okay.
lay out this fascinating vision for how we can restore that sense of shared purpose in a world that's becoming increasingly dominated by technology.
So what's their solution? Like, how do we get there?
Well, they talk about creating this revitalized technological republic.
Technological Republic? I like the sound of that.
Right, and it's basically a society that utilizes technology's power
Okay,
for collective good, not just personal gain.
I can get behind that, but what are some of the specific steps they propose?
Well, one that really struck me was their argument for a more robust national defense,
Okay,
especially when it comes to AI.
so they're saying we need to be more assertive.
Exactly. They're pushing back against that reluctance we talked about earlier, Silicon Valley's hesitation to get involved with military AI applications.
And their reasoning is?
Well, they argue that this reluctance, while understandable,
Right.
could actually put our national security at risk, especially as other countries are investing heavily in AI weaponry.
So it's kind of like falling behind in a technological arms race.
In a way, they make this compelling point about deterrence. A strong defense isn't just about military might.
Okay.
It's also about shaping the global landscape and preventing potential conflicts.
So it's about projecting strength to avoid conflict in the first place.
Exactly. And they draw this interesting parallel to the atomic age,
Oh, wow.
arguing that just as nuclear weapons completely redefined warfare and global politics,
Yeah.
AI will have a similarly transformative impact.
So we need to be prepared for that.
Absolutely. But of course, they acknowledge the ethical concerns as well.
Right. I mean, how can we ensure that these powerful technologies are used responsibly?
And the million-dollar question. And they advocate for a pragmatic approach,
Wow.
one that balances the need for national security with the imperative to avoid unintended consequences.
So finding that balance is key.
Exactly. And they suggest that the engineering mindset we talked about earlier is crucial for navigating these ethical dilemmas.
How so?
Well, it's about carefully assessing the risks and benefits,
All right.
focusing on tangible outcomes, and being willing to adapt as we learn more about AI's capabilities and limitations.
So it's about being flexible and responsive as the technology evolves.
Precisely. And their vision goes beyond military applications. They believe this engineering mindset is essential for tackling all sorts of societal challenges.
So what are some examples?
Well, they talk about using technology to address things like climate change,
Oh.
poverty, disease, big issues that affect us all.
It's about using tech to improve people's lives.
Exactly. And they point to past instances where a government investment in research and development has led to incredible innovations.
Like what?
Well, think about the Apollo program, the
Okay.
Human Genome Project,
Right.
even the internet itself. These were all ambitious collective efforts
Yeah.
that have had a profound impact on our world.
So they're saying we need to recapture that spirit of bold ambition.
Exactly. They argue that we've kind of lost that willingness to tackle grand challenges as a nation.
But why? What's holding us back?
Well, they suggest that our current political and cultural climate is too focused on short-term gains,
Okay.
partisan squabbles, and a fear of taking risks.
So it's like we're stuck in this cycle of gridlock and inaction.
In a way. And they see this as a major obstacle to rebuilding the technological republic.
I can see that. If we're constantly fighting amongst ourselves,
Right.
it's hard to focus on those bigger goals.
Exactly. And they have some interesting ideas about the government's role in all of this. They propose a more results-oriented approach,
Okay.
one that prioritizes actual achievements over symbolic gestures or ideological purity.
So it's about focusing on what works,
Yes.
not just what looks good politically.
Exactly. And they even critique the way government salaries are structured.
Oh, really?
They argue that we're essentially asking highly qualified individuals to donate their time and expertise because the compensation is so much lower than what they could earn in the private sector.
So it's like we're undervaluing public service.
Exactly. And they say this reflects a broader cultural issue where we don't place enough importance on working for the common good.
I see their point. And this ties back to those innovation deserts we talked about earlier,
Right.
those areas like education, healthcare,
Yeah.
law enforcement,
Okay.
that the tech sector has largely ignored.
And they attribute that neglect in part to a fear of controversy and a reluctance to engage with these really complex social problems.
So they're saying that Silicon Valley is playing it too safe.
In a way, they use the example of New Orleans' implementation of Palantir for predictive policing.
Right. That was a controversial program.
It was.
But it also showed how technology could potentially improve public safety.
Exactly. But the backlash, they argued, discouraged further innovation in this field.
So it's like we're so afraid of making a mistake
Right.
that we're not even trying anymore.
It's a risk-averse culture, and they believe that this is preventing us from tackling some of our most pressing societal challenges.
So how do we change that? How do we overcome this inertia?
Well, they offer some intriguing ideas, and a lot of it comes back to shared culture and a renewed sense of national identity.
So it's about finding common ground.
Exactly. They argue that a sense of shared purpose is absolutely essential for motivating people to work towards common goals.
Makes sense. If we all feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves,
Right.
we're more likely to work together.
And they use Singapore as an example again.
Oh, right, because of their deliberate policies regarding language and culture.
Exactly. They've created this really strong sense of national unity,
Yeah.
and they argue that this has contributed to Singapore's economic and social success.
It's a compelling argument, but like we said before, Singapore's a pretty unique case.
It is, and the authors recognize that. They know that it's more complex in a diverse society like the United States.
So how do we foster that sense of unity and shared purpose in a country as vast and diverse as ours?
That's the big question, and they don't pretend to have all the answers.
Okay.
But they suggest that we need to find ways to celebrate our commonalities
Hmm.
while also respecting our differences.
So it's about finding that balance again.
Exactly. And they also emphasize the role of storytelling and narrative in shaping national identity.
So how we talk about ourselves as a nation really matters.
It does. They argue that we need to find ways to tell stories that resonate with people from all walks of life,
Okay.
stories that inspire and bring us together.
Stories that remind us of what we have in common.
Precisely. And they even offer a critique of the effective altruism movement,
Really?
suggesting that its emphasis on rationality and universalism can sometimes overlook the emotional and cultural aspects of human motivation.
So it's not just about doing good in some abstract sense.
Right.
It's about finding meaning and purpose in our actions.
Exactly. It's about connecting to something larger than ourselves. And they argue that this connection is absolutely essential for mobilizing the collective will and resources we need to address the challenges of the 21st century.
This idea of the technological republic, it's more than just a book title.
It is.
It feels like a real call to action.
Absolutely. It's like they're challenging us to rethink our whole relationship with technology and how it's shaping society.
And I keep coming back to this engineering mindset. They talk about this focus on pragmatism and problem solving. It seems almost like a counterpoint to that Silicon Valley idealism.
I see what you mean. It's like they're saying we need to balance our aspirations with a dose of realism,
Yeah.
like a grounded understanding of the complexities we're facing.
So it's not about abandoning idealism altogether.
No.
It's about finding that sweet spot between vision and practicality.
Exactly. We need dreamers to push the boundaries, but also doers to make those dreams a reality.
And they keep bringing up the 5 whys as a tool to help us get there.
Oh, yeah, that persistent questioning. It's like digging down to the root of the problem.
Like peeling away the layers of an onion.
Exactly, until you get to that core issue.
And once you understand the underlying causes.
Right, then you can start developing effective solutions.
But even with the right tools and good intentions,
Uh-huh.
the authors acknowledge that progress isn't guaranteed.
Of course not. There will always be resistance to change.
Yeah.
People who benefit from the status quo.
And that's where leadership comes in.
Absolutely. They argue that we need strong leaders,
Right.
people with vision and courage to drive change even when it's difficult.
Do they give any examples?
They talk about Admiral Hyman Rickover.
Oh, wow, the father of the nuclear navy.
Exactly. He faced a ton of opposition,
Yeah.
but he completely transformed the U.S. Navy.
So it's a reminder that sometimes you have to shake things up
You do.
to make real progress.
And they're not just talking about government leaders. They say we need these kind of people in all sectors, people who are willing to challenge assumptions,
Yeah.
take risks, and fight for their convictions.
But it's not just about individuals.
No.
It's about collective action as well.
Definitely. They emphasize the need to revitalize that sense of shared purpose,
Right.
that belief in our ability to work together and solve problems as a nation.
And they connect this back to shared culture,
No.
language, values. It all ties together.
It does. They use Singapore as an example, again,
right.
highlighting how their policies have fostered a strong sense of national unity.
But the U.S. is a lot more diverse than Singapore.
For sure. And they acknowledge that complexity.
So how do we apply these ideas here?
They suggest finding ways to honor our commonalities
Okay.
while still respecting our differences.
Easier said than done.
It is. But they believe it's possible, and they stress the importance of storytelling
Oh, interesting.
and how we construct our national narrative.
So the stories we tell ourselves about who we are as a nation really matter.
They really do. They shape our identity and our sense of purpose. And even here, they offer a critique
Oh, really?
of the effective altruism movement.
Huh.
They suggest that this focus on rationality and universalism can sometimes miss the mark
Okay.
when it comes to understanding human motivation.
It's not just about cold, hard logic.
No, it's about tapping into those deeper emotional and cultural currents that drive us.
So finding meaning and purpose in what we do.
Exactly. And they argue that this connection to something larger than ourselves
Yeah.
is crucial for mobilizing the collective will and resources we need to face the challenges ahead.
So let's rehab. What are some of the key takeaways from the technological republic?
Well, one of the big ones is that Silicon Valley's focus has shifted
Okay.
from national ambitions to individual consumerism,
Right.
and that this shift has impacted our sense of shared purpose.
They also talked about those innovation deserts.
Mhm.
Those areas that Silicon Valley is avoiding,
Right.
which is hindering progress in those fields. And then there's the whole issue of AI and its rapid advancements.
It's moving faster than any technology we've seen before,
Right.
which raises a lot of questions about our preparedness.
Especially when it comes to the ethical dilemmas of using AI in warfare.
That's a big one. And related to that is Silicon Valley's reluctance to get involved in military AI projects,
Yeah.
which they argue could have serious implications for national security.
They also emphasize the importance of adopting an engineering mindset.
Absolutely. That pragmatic, problem-solving approach
Right.
focused on tangible outcomes.
And this ties back to the need for shared purpose
Hmm.
and a renewed sense of national identity. They believe that's essential for harnessing technology for the greater good.
They also argue for a more results-oriented government,
Okay.
one that's focused on achieving real progress,
Right.
not just scoring political points.
And they talk about the importance of shared culture and values
Yeah,
as a foundation for national unity and progress. It's a lot to think about.
it is. But ultimately, their message is one of hope.
Hope.
They believe that we have the power to shape the future of technology, is that
Right.
we can create a technological republic that benefits all of humanity.
That's a powerful vision. And it's a challenge to all of us.
It is. It's a call to action, to think bigger, to be bolder, and to work together to build a better future.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. I hope our listeners found it as thought-provoking as we did.